Kris Gustafson. I'm our Director of Technical Programs here at American Battery Technology Company. By education, I'm a civil structural engineer and have about 14 years in the industry. I really tried to figure out what I wanted to do coming out of school with that civil structural engineering degree. I spent some time as a research assistant in the lab and realized that, theoretical data and analysis really wasn't for me. I had some internships where I was a design engineer sitting behind a desk, and again, that wasn't necessarily for me. And then I also had an internship where I was in the field as a field engineer out on construction sites. And that's what kind of got me going a little bit and got me excited, was to be outside, to see everything coming together, and to be working through problems actively on site, redlining drawings and pushing solutions to those issues that popped up as we found them. So coming out of school, I was really looking for, a job in the construction industry, and landed in the engineering, procurement, and construction kind of value chain at a EPC firm called URS. Kind of took a little bit of an unconventional route. Coming out of school, went and left the Illinois area, Chicago area. I think if you look at the percentage of graduates coming out of University of Illinois, I think 90% of them probably go up to Chicago. So it was a little different, pushed myself outside of the comfort zone a little bit, and left home and moved down to Houston to kind of get into the oil, gas, and chemical side of things. Kickstarted my career in energy infrastructure. So from there, I kind of jumped around on various different project sites. I was up in Anchorage, Alaska. I was in the middle of nowhere, Iowa. I was in St. Louis, all over Illinois, got out to Saudi Arabia. And I was building, like I said, just up and down the oil and gas and chemical EPC value chain. So I got to have roles in field engineering, cost engineering, scheduling, kind of up and down those field positions. At which point I started to see maybe the dirtier side of the energy infrastructure, and wanted to get more into sustainable generation and renewables, and started to look for an EPC firm that was really focusing on that, and a project that was focusing on that, and landed at Burns & McDonnell, who is a more domestic focused EPC firm, but on a project that was based out of San Francisco, where we were building transmission lines and substations for power generation from wind and solar. So we would essentially build all of the infrastructure to get that power from those different sources into the municipalities within California. Which really allowed me to kind of pull together a lot of the fundamental project management skills that I'd learned from my previous roles. A lot of those building blocks helped me to become a project manager, where I could kind of drive some of these different projects. The program itself was about a $4.5 billion program, but each of the project managers within that program managed roughly, $500 million to $1 billion in work. So at any given time, I think I had around $750 million, $900 million in projects, and they were kind of all over the EPC life cycle. So anywhere from kind of pitching these projects to the owner to get financial investment decisions, through to permitting, all the way into construction in the field. So it gave me a really good breadth of knowledge into all of these different areas and stages within a project. At which point I had a friend that left the AECOM when I was there at the same time. He had gone to Tesla. I had gone to Burns & McDonnell. And, he was calling me pretty much the whole time I was at Burns McDonnell saying, you got to come check this out. You got to come check this out. That was really before Tesla had kind of taken off and had become the name it is today. But, eventually I just kind of heard him out and I said, all right, fine, I'll come check this out. Reno's not too far from San Francisco. So made my first trek out to Reno in 2016 and was amazed by the beehive of activity that was going on within the first section of the Gigafactory, and just kind of knew that was the right spot for me. Made the jump over into more of a contracting and procurement role, so kind of rounding out those project management skills that I had before with the likes of contracting terms and conditions and negotiating on cost and everything of that sort, kind of still focusing on the engineering, procurement, and construction side of things. So at Tesla, we really built an internal EPC firm so that we could do everything faster and less expensive than others. So it was an extremely exciting time in Tesla's kind of growth phase. I got to be a part of building out and finishing the Gigafactory here just outside of Reno, and then played a part in all of the Fremont modifications to build out Model Y and Model 3, and then got to help kickstart Shanghai. Spent a lot of time on the ground in Berlin getting that vertical, and then also got to kickstart Austin down in Texas. So a lot of different projects, but at that point, our current CEO here at ABTC called me up, and he had been at ABTC for about a year, and was gearing up to start design for a first commercial facility, and said, hey, I need someone that can do what you do and be flexible and wear a bunch of hats. And it sounded like a neat opportunity to really not just build another project, but to also build a company. So got me excited and made the jump, and been here for about 4 years now, which, I think we were at about 10 people when I came in, and now we're over 100. So really neat to see the growth from a project perspective and the growth from an org perspective.
Yeah, great. I mean, it's, what a great journey to this point. And like you said, having that full application and that full kind of product lifecycle and program lifecycle experience must, to have that from start to finish probably puts you in such a unique position where you can take on kind of new programs and have that kind of holistic approach to them for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I really look back on my career, and every position I've been in has provided some new experience that I pull from every day. So a little, like I said, a little non-traditional from how I got here, but certainly helped.
Yeah. There's no right way, is there, to get there? I think it's a case of you've gone through that, like you said, you've picked up all those learning points, and obviously it's put you in a great position now. So that obviously leads in quite nicely, and to learn more a little bit about kind of what ABTC does and where you guys sit in the market, and how you would sell yourself to an incumbent.
So ABTC is a critical mineral supply chain company, and we focus on those critical minerals that go directly into the lithium-ion battery manufacturing supply chain. We do that primarily because, a lot of our team does stem from Tesla, and what we recognized while we were there was that there was a lack of these critical minerals that actually go into batteries. It was difficult to find suppliers for what we needed. And with this, burgeoning development of battery manufacturing and EV manufacturing within the US, there's a huge lack of supply. And within the domestic US itself, we manufacture less than 1% of these critical minerals and metals that are needed for this manufacturing. So, we really stem the problem through two different lines of businesses. One is our lithium-ion battery recycling line of business, and the other is our lithium-ion battery or primary lithium extraction and refining line of business. So within the primary lithium refining and extraction line of business, we own about 10,000 acres of claims down in central Nevada of a very sedimentary claystone lithium-rich resource. So we're under development right now on a mine and co-located refinery at that location. So the intent is really to build out a lithium hydroxide refinery that can supply the market with about 30,000 metric tons of lithium hydroxide that'll be sold off into the likes of PCAM and CAM manufacturers. And then on the flip side, we have our lithium-ion battery recycling line of business, in which we take in end of life lithium-ion batteries and waste from the lithium-ion battery manufacturing chain. And we really, through a two-phase process, first break it down in a strategic demanufacturing manner down to really its elemental levels, and then build those elements back up into the critical minerals that go into the supply chain and back to those PCAM and CAM manufacturers. So we produce the metal sulfates and lithium hydroxide, similar to the lithium hydroxide that's coming out of our mine and refinery in Tonopah, or just outside of Tonopah. So we quite literally are kind of closing the loop and also filling the loop at the same time. One thing we recognized is that recycling can be a great answer for supplying the manufacturing chain, but it can't be the answer while there's this much growth. At steady state, it'll be a terrific option, but until we actually get to that steady state, there has to be something that's feeding the loop as well to get those minerals and metals into the market.
Yeah, great. I mean, it's obviously something that's high on the agenda, isn't it, across the entire battery kind of market at the moment, that opportunity to second life and recyclable batteries at that state. I think it's probably on a lot of people's lips at the moment, and a lot of the meetings that we have as well around that is how do we kind of fix that problem really? What's from your perspective, an ABTC, what's the plan over the next kind of 1, 3, 5 years for you guys? Where do you see the business going and kind of growing into? Yeah,
well, I think I mentioned when I came in about 4 years ago, we were at, 10 people, right? And that was, all of our work at that point was really on the laboratory scale. And we were just starting to move into pilot systems and thinking about our first commercial facilities. And here we are now today at the point where we have an operating commercial facility for recycling just outside of Reno. And we're under design and permitting for a lithium hydroxide refinery. And then we just won a grant a few weeks ago to build out a second commercial facility somewhere in the Southeast. So, over the next 1, 3, 5 years, I would expect this to grow at a very similar rate, right? And probably even more so because these projects are just getting larger and larger, and the manpower that's going to be needed for them is going to be significant. So it's a major growth period in our life as a company, and the next 5 years are going to be really critical.
Yeah, great. And I think, one of the things that we see a lot is that there's so many businesses that come to the market with a really great concept, a great prototype, even a great pilot line often, but actually then turning that into a fully commercialized business is really difficult, and a lot of businesses hit a lot of snags and a lot of potholes. So it must have been a really great experience, like you said, from yourself to be such early on and kind of go through that full journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing we've done correctly is we haven't skipped any steps, right? I think there are a lot of companies that come out with a prototype and then maybe try and scale it up too fast, right? They want to go from lab scale all the way up to commercial scale too quickly, and they skip that step of validating something at kind of that medium pilot scale. And it might seem like, we've gone really fast through that process, but it's kind of been because we've had that support from both public and private corporations that have truly helped us to move along that commercialization pathway very quickly on both lines of businesses. So yeah, it's been a wild ride to date, and I just see it getting more and more exciting.
From your side, do you feel like you've seen a change in the business? And I think that what I mean by that is we see lots of people that come into the business at an early stage, and as you mentioned, they're very kind of R&D and lab focused. But the people that then take that business through that journey, it does change, doesn't it, in terms of what is required from the people to kind of drive that business forward at that stage?
Yeah, one of the things that we've done is we've kind of taken this ideology from our Tesla days, and we've taken a lot of the teams internal, right? We started out with just a small laboratory team that has been built out into a full-scale R&D team with quality analysis and quality control arm that helps not just the R&D team, but also our operations team, so that they can get immediate results on product coming out of the commercial system, as well as samples that are coming out of the R&D processes. And then we built up an internal engineering team that could take those ideas at the laboratory scale and really push them into something tangible in these pilot systems and these commercial systems. So it means a lot for us to be able to do all of that in-house and not have to go to someone else to say, hey, we have this idea. Can you help us make that real? But instead, we can just talk about that internally, and that kind of feedback loop is constant between those teams. And then even more so, we built out our own construction team in-house so that we could go and we could control all of that construction when it comes to both those pilot systems and those commercial systems. We don't rely on general contractors necessarily to build out these facilities. And now we're at the point where we're handing that off into our own internal operations team as well. So I think, having each of those verticals internally has been extremely important for us to be able to move very fast, but also to make sure that we're not missing something. There's constant feedback between all of those different teams. And it's, sometimes we have to break down the barriers of communication, but when we do, it becomes an extremely collaborative environment.
I think it's quality control as well, isn't it? I think, having that fully in-house, as you said, that closed loop, that feedback is just ensures that the quality is always maintained throughout as you scale as well.
Exactly. Otherwise, you're shipping material off and it's going to take a few days just to get some analysis on it to be able to turn it around.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, the business has gone through such a great period over the last few years, undoubtedly without challenge though. So, what over the last kind of couple of years and as the market shifted, what have you guys found has kind of been the biggest challenge for you over the last few years?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge for us has really been, we started from scratch. Like, we didn't have technologies that were at a commercial scale, and we needed to go through that research and development process. And that is an inherently creative process, and there are going to be missteps and there are going to be failures, but those failures are what have allowed us to figure out what is best for us in the commercial scale. And that really is the defining factor behind how we even came up with these ideas for recycling in the first place. It was, the missteps that we had at Tesla around designing and developing these battery manufacturing processes, in which we, accidentally found out what made batteries fall apart very easy. So we kind of use those defect mechanisms in reverse. But inherently, as you scale up through the laboratory into pilot and into commercial, it's not a seamless effort. So, working through all those problems, which in my mind is actually the fun part of it all, is our biggest challenge and has been one of our biggest challenges. But we're able to work through it because, again, we do have those internal teams that have the capabilities to be there on site day in, day out. And, you're not going to get someone that works 9 to 5. They're going to be dedicated to this project because they feel like there is ownership in it. And they want to be there at night. They want to be there early in the morning. They want to live it. They want to breathe it. So those challenges have become something that's actually brought our team together, and it's made us stronger.
It's building blocks, isn't it? From the start, as you mentioned, starting from scratch has allowed you to scale in the way you would like to scale, and I'm sure kind of tweak and adjust along that way to make sure you've got to the point where you are now, and I've got really firm kind of foundations into, as you said, carry on and grow over the next few years as well. In terms of innovations, trends, how do you guys kind of stay ahead? How are you guys kind of mapping it out and kind of looking at where the next kind of opportunity is for you guys as a business and working towards that?
One way that we like to look at our technologies is that they are not the current generation or current market technologies, right? I think we as an industry have done a really good job of identifying all these prohibitive factors that are going to cause us to not be able to do something, whether it's, hey, we can't get enough water, or the electricity isn't there, or permitting is going to be an issue. The way that we look at that is okay, then we need to come up with these next generation unconventional ideas that make things more economical, that don't use all of these resources, that allow permitting teams to look at it and move us forward more quickly because we are more environmentally friendly or because we are more sustainable. So we are constantly looking at that next generation of technologies, even within this commercial recycling facility we have now. We won a $20 million grant from the Department of Energy about a year and a half ago to develop 3 next generation recycling technologies that we consider advanced separation, that kind of increase the amount of material that we capture from the batteries themselves. So we're not just chasing those kind of high value metals like nickel, manganese, and cobalt, but also going after the likes of the electrolyte and the graphite, which make up a significant portion of the battery from a weight percentage. Right now, that's just kind of lost in the battery recycling industry. So kind of increasing the amount of material that we capture, but also reducing our footprint from an energy perspective and from a chemical reagent perspective is how we want to be able to position ourselves in the future so that we are more competitive from a cost perspective and more sustainable and environmentally friendly. So it's easier for us to build facilities in areas that may not be able to support a traditional refining or recycling facility. It really allows us to focus on these unconventional methods and find a way to get around those prohibitive factors that have been identified.
Great. I think it's easy coming up with the problems, isn't it? It's finding the solutions that is the challenge. So I think obviously, like you said, being able to kind of reverse engineer that and look at what you've got as a business and then kind of map it forward from that perspective just makes sense. And I think the chemical capture piece as well is, again, makes so much sense, but you don't always hear people talking about that technology within the graphite, etc., from that side, outside of those core metals. Kind of looking forward then, what are the priorities for the business and for yourself kind of in your role over the kind of next 12 months?
Yeah, the 12 months, me specifically, I am our business manager on all of our Department of Energy grants. So upon being selected for award negotiations on this most recent commercial 2 facility, my immediate action is to get that contracted. And there's a heavy push to get this contracted as quickly as possible. And the idea is that we want to be able to start on that project sometime in early 2025. And then also from kind of not just a Department of Energy perspective, but also from a, my role in the company perspective, I'm responsible for building out these facilities. So, siting it, making sure it's in the right location, and kicking off all of those design efforts is going to be critical to us being successful. But, that's just on the recycling line of business, right? We have a lot to do on the extraction and refining side of things as well. There's a lot of emphasis on our Tonopah facility to ensure that we move swiftly through the permitting process. So that's something we've been underway on now for the better part of 2 years. And, we want to be able to close that out and move into more of the detailed design efforts and procurement efforts on that facility.
And I think you mentioned the DOE funding there is, something I was kind of keen to explore a bit further with you. The market over the last 12, 18 months has been relatively tight, and we've seen a number of businesses that have struggled to raise funding from private or from kind of government funding as well. So just if you can just talk me through a bit about that and the kind of process to secure that funding and how you managed to do that as a business.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of in an unprecedented time with the amount of money that's available from the federal government. I think if you're a small to medium-sized company and you're not chasing some of these opportunities, then you're really missing out. This is an opportunity that likely won't come around again. The federal government has done a really good job of recognizing where we're maybe missing something from an industry perspective and from a supply chain perspective. And, I think it could have been COVID that kind of kicked that off into everyone's mind, where we need to kind of localize and onshore a lot of that manufacturing. But whenever these different opportunities come out, I like to think that we're actually very fortunate from a company perspective, because our goals seem to align very directly with the goals of the federal government. It has been a difficult time in the industry, and I think we're very lucky that the federal government wants to instigate this type of development around cell manufacturing and cell recycling and critical minerals development. So that's been really critical to us. But that process of applying and being awarded and negotiating and contracting, it's not something that happens overnight. It is something that is very defined from a process perspective, and the government has a lot of boxes they have to check, which is actually refreshing to see, because they're not just handing checks out, right? There's a lot of due diligence that's done at every step of the way. And even when we're executing on these awards, there's continued due diligence. There are quarterly reports, there are annual reports, there are annual site visits, there are continuation applications to get more funding. And then every invoice, you have to kind of justify what you're actually invoicing for. So there's a lot to do on that front. It really is kind of a full-time job just to manage these awards from a business perspective. And it really has allowed us to accelerate our timing as a company too. These projects that we're building right now have always been in the pipeline of what we wanted to do. But I think originally, if you talked to us 4 years ago, they would have been much further down the line. But because we have been able to receive this funding, it's accelerated it quite a bit. And it's really important, but also showing that, we are providing a return on investment to the government, I think is why we've been so successful on a lot of these applications and a lot of these projects. If I think back to when I first came in, we had really just won our first Department of Energy grant, which was only for $2 million. And then we won our second not too long after that, which was only for $4.5 million. And then, as we progressed and as we were successful on both of those projects, it made us more attractive to the government to say, hey, these projects have been successful at a much smaller scale. If we give them continuing funding, we will see that idea grow into something tangible and something that can actually impact the industry and the sector. And I think, again, that's why we've been able to move progressively into larger and larger funding from the Department of Energy.
You've been able to hit those kind of critical milestones. You've been able to kind of report well. And obviously that's led to a point and an opportunity where that funding can increase. For the businesses that are maybe looking back at that first set of funding that you guys got, how can these guys put themselves in a position to be able to achieve that, get that opportunity to, kind of win funding from the DOE so that they can kind of emulate the journey that you guys have gone on?
It's really not skipping steps. I think that the government can recognize very quickly when your technology is not ready to be at a certain level. And so, recognizing where you actually are at in that development and growth life, that's going to be very important, and making sure that you are being honest about what level you're at from a technology readiness perspective is key. And it's, there's nothing wrong with starting at, a technology readiness level 1 or 2 or 3 and taking a little bit of time to do it correctly and move that up and scale that up. It'll only accelerate if you do it correctly and can validate it with those partners. And then the more you can get others involved and the others interested, it will help you to scale up even further. So, like I said, I mean, I think 4 years ago, if you looked at what we were doing, it might have seemed slow, but then when you look at it now, it's really accelerated extremely fast. And that's all because of the proper steps that we took from day one.
I think a lot of businesses have great prototypes. They've got a great concept. But I think it's just understanding how to unlock that investment along their journey to help them to kind of go through that and to make a fully commercialized business, really.
Yeah. And to not be afraid to kind of throw something out, right? Throw an idea out. If you figure out that something might not work, then you kind of need to go back to the drawing board or reconfigure something. When I think about the technologies that we started with 4 years ago, they're pretty different from what we're actually commercializing now. And that is because that constant feedback loop between our R&D team and our construction team and our engineering team and our operations team, that communication and collaboration has really allowed us to develop something that works for every single one of those verticals.
Fail fast mentality, isn't it? Of kind of put it to trial, get the feedback, make a decision, kind of move on is what allows businesses to move forward quickly.
Yeah. The mindset internally is really not to be afraid of failure, kind of to embrace it. And failure is okay as long as you pivot and move quickly to fix it.
Absolutely. And we've mentioned and we've seen and we've seen across the market, obviously, as businesses have struggled maybe to raise funding over the last kind of 12 to 18 months, we've seen a lot more kind of partnerships being announced with businesses leveraging off each other. And is that something that you think we will continue to see going forward? And can you see the value in those kind of partnerships?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's key to the industry is kind of closing those gaps, right? If us as a company is just going to sit here and look at what we're doing in a closed fashion, right? Then we're not going to actually get anything done. But it's those strategic partnerships that we have with PCAM and CAM manufacturers and automotive manufacturers and cell manufacturers that really completes the loop. If we're not completing the loop, then what are we really focusing on? And that's one kind of maybe gap that I think we do see within the federal government funding that has been pushed out, is they're kind of looking at each of these individual nodes rather than trying to tie them together. But I think we do see a lot of industry collaboration nowadays, like you mentioned, through different conferences and summits where people are getting together to say, hey, how can we bring these projects together to make sure that we are closing those gaps?
And that allows smaller businesses to maybe hit those milestones, doesn't it? That allows them to unlock some of that further funding down the line.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the larger corporations out there are starting to recognize that there are these emerging technologies that need to be fostered, not just from a federal perspective, but also from a private perspective too. And I think they're starting to want to help the development of those technologies because they see the gap as well. They see these unconventional technologies as truly helping the industry and helping them to hit their goals.
It's, as you mentioned, it's been a challenging time for a number of businesses, but I think having the know-how and have gone through the journey that you've gone on, obviously it lends itself well, doesn't it, to being able to kind of tap into this and make sure that you've got that sustained and continued growth, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Going forward, ABTC as a business, I mentioned the next kind of 12 months, but what are the kind of key milestones that we should be looking out for and anyone listening should be looking out for, to keep an eye on from you guys over the next kind of 12, 18 months?
Right in the near term is us getting that contracting for this next project over the line and kind of doing some type of groundbreaking on that site. I think that'll be key. And then also I think we're, looking to engage with a lot of different communities and stakeholders around our permitting efforts down in Tonopah. I think that's going to be key as well, so that we can kind of go a little bit more public with what we're doing in those locales and make sure that everyone is on board with our technology and our process and our facilities. And then also, here at this commercial facility that we're operating now, we're under design and construction of our second phase, which is that chemical hydrometallurgical train. And we're looking forward to getting that up and running as well, which is, really when we will bring those metal sulfates and lithium hydroxide to market. So kind of rounding out that facility, kicking off the next recycling facility, and really taking definitive next steps on our mine and refinery are the keys to the next 12 to 18 months.